One inescapable fact about the automotive industry is that manufacturers work hard to make journalists fall in love with their cars. For instance, Aston Martin flew me to Germany a couple years ago to drive their new V12 Vantage on the Nürburgring and the Autobahn. It was an amazing experience, and I can't say it put the car in a bad light. But what would it be like to drive the Vantage back home in Los Angeles? How would it handle Latigo, one of my favorite canyon roads in Malibu? And getting there, how would it brave the inevitable nightmare of LA traffic? I called up Aston Martin, asked for a loaner, and found out firsthand this car was really as good as memory served. The concept behind the V12 Vantage is simple and awesome. Stuff the biggest engine Aston Martin makes into the smallest body they build. Genius, right? Well, Carroll Shelby would have approved of this mad creation. Shoehorned into the engine bay is a 5.9-liter V12 that churns 510 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. Engineers had to tilt the radiator to squeeze the lump into that tiny space. But here's the best part. Though they could have hooked it up to an automatic gearbox, they used a manual instead. They said it was better suited to the car's character. And to add to the mystique, they swore they'd only build 1,000 of these bad boys worldwide. By now, you're starting to see what I love about this car. Big engine, small body, 3 pedals. Well, when I drove the car in Germany, it was kind of like vacationing with your girlfriend. Lots of fun, but I wasn't sure the afterglow would last in the real world. To get to my favorite canyon road, I first had to tackle that famously frustrating Los Angeles gridlock.
So traffic slows us down and we get to see the V12 Vantage's real personality. So one of my main concerns about driving this car in traffic is my left leg gonna die with all the clutch effort? When you're crawling across the interstate in a car like this, you definitely get a feeling of kind of animalistic presence. It sits wide in the lane, even though this is the smallest body Aston Martin makes. It's just got a heavy road presence, you know? People get out of your way. It feels really burly. So some of the Aston's charms or quirks, depending on how you look at it, sort of come out in traffic. You know, you notice ergonomics aren't quite right. Elbow thing is a little bit in your way. Navigation system is pretty arcane. The multimedia system is also pretty ancient. You know, the carbon ceramics work well, but you just kind of notice the edges here and there a little bit off. I mean, they're not like the crime of the century, but they're definitely flaws. Crawling along the freeway, I had this concern that I'd really get exhausted driving this high horsepower manual transmission car all day, but it's actually a lot easier than I thought. You can almost always leave it in 3rd gear and just kind of gas it when you need to and not worry about the clutch. So I've spent the past hour or so experiencing this admittedly great car in some really crappy traffic. It's time to finally head up PCH and find some canyon roads. Let's go have some fun.
After the soul-crushing slog through rush hour, it didn't take long for the frown to fade from my face. After all, I'd finally reached my stomping grounds, a place where I love driving for the sheer fun of it. Latigo Canyon in Malibu, a road whose challenging elevation changes and hairpin turns make it a famous destination for hardcore motorcyclists and serious sports car drivers.
You know, it's easy to tell when a car maker is trying to be all things to all people. The great thing about the V12 Vantage is, it's kind of the opposite. This car is really a driver's car. It's a pussycat around town, but when you've got the manual gearbox, you can control exactly where you are in the power band on a twisty road like this. You downshift, it snorts at you, and when you lay into it, it really comes alive. They have a nice mechanical feel to this shifter. It's not too heavy, it's got a little bit of heft to it, but it doesn't kill you. You got nice positive engagements, it's not too clicky, it's not too notchy, it's kind of got that just right feeling. I don't care how much quicker a dual clutch transmission is or how much smoother an automatic gearbox would be. I feel more rewarded when I drive a car like this and I get the downshift just right. car in that way. You know, between just sport mode and stability control settings, that's pretty much all you got, and in many ways it's really all you need. You know, even the best turbocharged engines these days have a little bit of turbo lag. Great thing about a big V12 like this that has light internal components is quick throttle response, instant power, great sound. So this 5.9 liter V12, really sort of a back to basics engine. It doesn't have direct injection, it doesn't have variable valve timing. You know, it's been trumped recently by the new Vanquish that has 565 horsepower, but this engine just works well. It does everything it's supposed to do. It's got plenty of power, it's got a nice broad torque range. Even though it's got an extruded aluminum tub as a chassis and a few weight-saving measures here and there, a little over 3,700 pounds, the V12 Vantage is not a light car. However, there's a lot of tuning that goes into making this suspension kind of shrink the car and make it feel smaller than it actually is. It's more nimble than you think it would be. All the punishment you endured on surface streets and freeways from the stiff ride is rewarded with this just feeling of glued down connectedness. Tons of grip from these wide tires. But the great thing is, in the right settings, if you get into a situation where you want to power throttle a little bit, it'll let you do that. It'll catch you, of course, but you know, you get a little bit of play. You know, when I was a kid and I was reading car magazines, I really obsessed over 0 to 60 times and top speeds and lateral G-forces. But the more I drive, the more I think about the way a car feels. And especially on the real world, not on the track. When you're just driving on a road like this and enjoying the interaction between the machine and the road, you really appreciate a car like the Vantage. So you just kind of feel this honesty to this car. It's just the way everything works together. The engine, the gearbox, the suspension, the brakes. You know, I don't think it particularly excels in one area. It's not that it's so fast in acceleration. It's not that it corners with such amazing nimbleness. It's just the way the systems work together. You feel kind of at one with the car. It's a total cliche, but, you know, it's kind of true. So sure, it's easier to sit in traffic with an automatic, but can you have this much fun on this kind of road without a manual gearbox? I don't think so.
After crisscrossing the canyon several dozen times, was this Aston Martin as magical as I remembered it being? The manual gearbox and lusty V12 demand a level of involvement that's rare in this automated age. It's that X factor, that hard-to-pin-down feeling of charisma that still makes the V12 Vantage one of the more thrilling and ultimately rewarding cars to drive hard. Performance numbers be damned.
For Car and Driver, I'm Basem Wasef. Thanks for watching.